Happy Prince was a very beautiful statue. He was covered all over with thin pieces of fine gold. For eyes, he had two bright blue jewels called sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on the hilt of his sword. The statue stood very high up, on a tall column in the city. One night, a little swallow flew over the city. Key meaning of swallow is a small, migratory bird known for its swift, graceful flight. His friends had gone away to Egypt 6 weeks before, but he had stayed behind. Then, he decided to go to Egypt too. The swallow flew all day long, and at night time he arrived at the city. He asked himself, "Where shall I put up?" He hoped the town had made preparations for him. Then he saw the statue on the tall column. He cried, "I will put up there," saying it was a fine position with plenty of fresh air. So, he alighted, which means he landed, just between the feet of the Happy Prince. He said softly to himself, "I have a golden bedroom," as he looked around. He prepared to go to sleep. But just as he was putting his head under his wing, a large drop of water fell on him. He cried, "What a curious thing!" He noticed there wasn't a single cloud in the sky, and the stars were quite clear and bright, yet it was raining. Then another drop fell. He said, "What is the use of a statue if it cannot keep the rain off?" He decided, "I must look for a good chimney pot," and determined to fly away. Key meaning of chimney pot is a pipe on top of a chimney, often made of clay, that helps smoke go out. But before he had even opened his wings, a third drop fell. He looked up and saw, He wondered, what did he see? The eyes of the Happy Prince were filled with tears, and tears were running down his golden cheeks. His face was so beautiful in the moonlight that the little swallow was filled with pity. The swallow asked, "Who are you?" The statue replied, "I am the Happy Prince." The swallow then asked, "Why are you weeping then?" He added, "You have quite drenched me." Key meaning of drenched is completely soaked or wet through. The statue answered that when he was alive and had a human heart, he did not know what tears were. This was because he lived in the palace, where sorrow was not allowed to enter. His courtiers, meaning his attendants or advisors in the royal court, called him the Happy Prince, and he was indeed happy. So he lived, and so he died. Now that he was dead, they had set him up here so high that he could see all the ugliness and misery of his city. And even though his heart was made of lead, a heavy, soft, grey metal, he could not choose but weep. Key meaning of lead is a heavy, soft, grey metal. The swallow said to himself, "What? Is he not solid gold?" He was too polite to make any personal remarks. The statue continued in a low musical voice, "Far away, in a little street there is a poor house. One of the windows was open, and through it, the prince could see a woman seated at a table. Her face was thin and worn, and she had coarse, red hands, all pricked by the needle, for she was a seamstress." Key meaning of seamstress is a woman who makes a living by sewing. She was embroidering flowers on a sateen gown for the love list of the queen's maids of honor, to wear at the next court ball. In a bed in the corner of the room, her little boy was lying ill. He had a fever and was asking his mother to give him oranges. His mother had nothing to give him but river water, so he was crying. The prince asked, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not bring her the ruby out of my sword hilt?" He explained, "My feet are fastened to this pedestal and I cannot move." Key meaning of pedestal is a base or support on which a statue, obelisk, or column is mounted. The swallow said, "I am waited for in Egypt." He mentioned his friends were flying up and down the Nile and talking to the large lotus flowers, and soon they would go to sleep. The prince asked the swallow to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. He said, "The boy is so thirsty, and the mother so sad." The swallow answered, "I don't think I like boys. I want to go to Egypt." But the Happy Prince looked so sad that the little swallow was sorry. He said, "It is very cold here," but he agreed to stay with him for one night and be his messenger. The prince said, "Thank you, little swallow." The swallow picked out the great ruby from the prince's sword and flew away with it in his beak over the roofs of the town. He passed by the cathedral tower, where white marble angels were sculptured. He passed by the palace and heard the sound of dancing. A beautiful girl came out on the balcony with her lover. She said, "I hope my dress will be ready in time for the state ball, and I have ordered flowers to be embroidered on it, but the seamstresses are so lazy." He passed over the river and saw the lanterns hanging on the masts of the ships. At last, he came to the poor woman's house and looked in. The boy was tossing feverishly on his bed, and the mother had fallen asleep because she was so tired. The swallow hopped in and laid the great ruby on the table beside the woman's thimble. Key meaning of thimble is a small, hard cap worn on the finger to protect it from the needle when sewing. Then he flew gently around the bed, fanning the boy's forehead with his wings. The boy said, "How cool I feel. I must be getting better," and he sunk into a delicious slumber. Then the swallow flew back to the happy prince and told him what he had done. He remarked, "It is curious, but I feel quite warm now, although it is so cold." The prince said, "That is because you have done a good action." And the little swallow began to think, and then fell asleep, as thinking always made him sleepy. When day broke, he flew down to the river and had a bath. He said, "Tonight I go to Egypt," and he was in high spirits at the prospect. He visited all the monuments and sat a long time on top of the church steeple. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. He cried, "Have you any commissions for Egypt? I am just starting." The prince said, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you stay with me one night longer?" The swallow answered, "I am waited for in Egypt." The prince said, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, far away across the city I see a young man in a garret." Key meaning of garret is a small, often uncomfortable room, typically in the top of a house, just under the roof. He was leaning over a desk covered with papers, and in the glass by his side, there was a bunch of withered violets. His hair was brown and crisp, and his lips were red as a pomegranate, and he had large and dreamy eyes. He was trying to finish a play for the director of the theatre, but he was too cold to write any more. There was no fire in the grate, meaning no warmth from a fireplace, and hunger had made him faint. Key meaning of faint is to lose consciousness for a short time, usually from a lack of blood flow to the brain. The swallow, who really had a good heart, said, "I will wait with you one night longer." He asked if he should take another ruby to the young playwright. The prince replied, "Alas, I have no ruby now." He said, "My eyes are all that I have left. They are made of rare sapphires, which were brought out of India 1,000 years ago." He ordered the swallow to pluck out one of them and take it to the playwright. He said he will sell it to the jeweler and buy firewood and finish his play. "Dear prince," said the swallow, "I cannot do that," and he began to weep. The prince said, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, do as I command you." So the swallow plucked out the prince's eye and flew away to the young man's garret. It was easy enough to get in, as there was a hole in the roof. Through this, he darted, meaning he moved suddenly and quickly, and came into the room. The young man had his head buried in his hands, so he did not hear the flutter of the bird's wings. When he looked up, he found the beautiful sapphire lying on the withered violets. The young man cried, "I am beginning to be appreciated, and this is from some great admirer." He said, "Now I can finish my play," and he looked quite happy. The next day, the swallow flew down to the harbor. He sat on the mast of a large vessel and watched the sailors working. He cried, "I am going to Egypt," but nobody minded, meaning nobody paid attention. When the moon rose, he flew back to the happy prince. He cried, "I have come to bid you goodbye." The prince said, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, will you not stay with me one night longer?" The swallow answered, "It is winter, and the snow will soon be here." He explained that in Egypt, the sun is warm on the green palm trees, and the crocodiles lie in the mud and look lazily about them. The happy prince said, "In the square below, there stands a little match girl. She had let her matches fall in the gutter, and they were all spoiled. Her father would beat her if she did not bring home some money, and she was crying. She had no shoes or stockings, and her little head was bare. The prince asked the swallow to pluck out his other eye and give it to her, so her father would not beat her. The swallow said, "I will stay with you one night longer, but I cannot pluck out your eye. You would be quite blind then." The prince said, "Swallow, swallow, little swallow, do as I command you." So he plucked out the prince's other eye and darted down with it. He swooped past the match girl, meaning he flew down quickly, and slipped the jewel into the palm of her hand. "What a lovely bit of glass," cried the little girl, and she ran home, laughing. Then the swallow came back to the prince. "You are blind now," he said, "so I will stay with you always." "No, little swallow," said the poor prince, "you must go away to Egypt." "No, I will stay with you always," said the swallow, and he slept at the prince's feet. All the next day he sat on the prince's shoulder and told him stories of what he had seen in strange lands. "Dear little swallow," said the prince, "you tell me of marvelous things, but more marvelous than anything is the suffering of men and women." He said, "There is no mystery so great as misery." He then commanded, "Fly over my city, little swallow, and tell me what you see there." So the swallow flew over the great city and saw the rich making merry, meaning enjoying themselves, in their beautiful houses, while the beggars were sitting at the gates. He flew into dark lanes and saw the white faces of starving children looking out listlessly, meaning without energy or interest, at the black streets. Under the archway of a bridge, two little boys were lying in each other's arms to try and keep themselves warm. They said, "How hungry we are!" The watchman shouted, "You must not lie here," and they wandered out into the rain. Then he flew back and told the prince what he had seen. The prince said, "I am covered with fine gold. You must take it off, leaf by leaf, and give it to the poor. The living always think that gold can make them happy." Leaf after leaf of the fine gold the swallow picked off, until the happy prince looked quite dull and grey. Leaf after leaf of the fine gold he brought to the poor, and the children's faces grew rosier, and they laughed and played in the street. They cried, "We have bread now." Then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. The streets looked as if they were made of silver. Everybody went about in furs, and the little boys wore scarlet caps and skated on the ice. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince, because he loved him too well. He picked up crumbs outside the baker's door when the baker was not looking, and tried to keep himself warm by flapping his wings. But at last, he knew that he was going to die. He had just enough strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder once more. He murmured, meaning he spoke softly, "Goodbye, dear prince." He asked, "Will you let me kiss your hand?" "I am glad that you are going to Egypt at last, little swallow," said the prince. "You have stayed too long here, but you must kiss me on the lips, for I love you." "It is not to Egypt that I am going," said the swallow. "I am going to the house of death. Death is the brother of sleep, is he not?" And he kissed the happy prince on the lips, and fell down dead at his feet. At that moment a curious crack sounded inside the statue, as if something had broken. The fact is that the leaden heart had snapped right in two. It certainly was a dreadfully hard frost. Early the next morning, the mayor was walking in the square below in company with the town councillors. As they passed the column, he looked up at the statue. "Dear me! How shabby the happy prince looks," he said. Key meaning of shabby is worn out or dilapidated in appearance. "How shabby, indeed," cried the town councillors, who always agreed with the mayor, and they went up to look at it. "The ruby has fallen out of his sword, his eyes are gone, and he is golden no longer," said the mayor. "In fact, he is little better than a beggar." "Little better than a beggar," said the town councillors. "And here is actually a dead bird at his feet," continued the mayor. "We must really issue a proclamation, meaning an official public announcement, that birds are not to be allowed to die here." And the town clerk made a note of the suggestion. So they pulled down the statue of the happy prince. As he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful, said the art professor at the university. Then they melted the statue in a furnace. Key meaning of furnace is an enclosed structure in which material can be heated to very high temperatures, used for smelting metals or baking ceramics. What a strange thing, said the overseer of the workmen at the foundry, which is a place where metal casting is done. This broken lead heart will not melt in the furnace. We must throw it away, he said. So they threw it on a dust heap where the dead swallow was also lying. Bring me the two most precious things in the city, said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird. You have rightly chosen, said God, for in my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing for evermore, and in my city of gold the happy prince shall praise me. Key meaning of paradise is a place of extreme beauty, delight, or happiness.